Could you prove that you existed before last Thursday? You would argue, yes, you have memories, photographs, relationships, evidence from the thousands of generations before you. But what if all that appeared last Thursday as well? Everything. Every trace of history exactly as you know it. Now, could you prove otherwise? This notion that the universe and everything in it was created last Thursday is called last Thursdayism. A nice but impossible thought experiment, because it doesn't really challenge you on whether your past is real, but more surreptitiously asks you what would happen if you discovered it wasn't. This is not philosophy for Verso, it's reality. He was never born, he was created. Worse, he is someone else, a life he never lived. Memories planted, a borrowed history to patch a mourning heart.
Maman did a terrible thing painting you into Verso's canvas, giving you his memories.
A replacement. A tool of grief. Verso's challenge isn't the same as ours. It's not why do I exist, it's how do I cope with the burden of my creation. Verso spent decades forging his own identity. The tragedy is that he was never meant to have one. And with that, we are faced with a rather more disturbing premise. Even after becoming someone new, can you ever escape the person you were created to be? Because that is Verso's tragedy. Becoming his own person doesn't free him from his origins.
Does it bother you that I'm not him?
He perpetually confronts them. Is becoming your own person about escaping where you came from, or choosing who you become despite it? Before Painted Verso was Verso de Cendre. He was killed in a house fire saving his younger sister Alicia. His death destroyed the family. Alicia, disfigured and in pain from the fire, also lost her voice. Clair, absorbing herself in the war with the culprits. Renoir, trying to hold together a family falling apart, while Aline retreated. Eventually, Aline spent time in Verso's canvas to feel closer to him. Here remains the last living fragment of his soul, the power behind the canvas, and because of that, everything there is connected to him, a place of serenity, where grief could be paused, the absence softened. At some point, though, Aline recreates Lumiere and her family in the canvas, as she intended them to be. Whether the purpose was comfort, denial, or something else is largely irrelevant. The outcome remains. A world where Verso still exists, or at least some version of him. And this matters because Painted Verso was never meant to discover who he was. He was never meant to become his own person. His purpose decided, and his existence someone's necessity. Up until the fracture, Aline would be living with her painted family in her painted fantasy. Everyone as they are as she intends. Some interpret Maëlle's ending as her painting Verso to her will, so why not assume that Aline does the same? After all, would he be fulfilling his purpose if he was not Verso? But Renoir enters, the monolith appears, and both painters trapped. Eileen no longer has control, and purpose unravels. It is not until Verso meets Clair that we see his own personal fracture. Once he learns the truth from her, he is faced with this intangible identity crisis, one he takes decades to process. It is one thing to be the recreation of a dead person, it's another to be trapped as them indefinitely. Instantly, every experience you thought was meaningful may have been by design, not genuine. Every achievement not your own. However, that is not what then defines the Verso we know and love. Yes, he has the fundamentals of another, but he is now walking a path entirely of his own.
Same, but each different.
Every step becomes a separation of his own self from his borrowed one. Every friendship, every loss, accumulating experiences the original never had. He adapts and evolves based on someone else's blueprint and without the shadow of an omnipotent creator. The copy is where he started, not where he ended. It's one thing to grapple with one's origins, but then to never know where you begin and your shadow ends is another beast entirely. He undoubtedly becomes his own person, but how much of that is him? Is he ever truly himself? Is there any meaningful difference? Every passing year makes him someone new, but we never know when that transition occurs. When does a copy become unique? It's a question that Expedition 33 never really answers directly, and those are usually the questions I find most interesting and really value exploring. I see a lot of discourse comparing Lumerians to AI as something sophisticated but ultimately artificial. The assumption is often that because they were created rather than born, their humanity is somehow diminished. However, I think it's more interesting to invert that perspective. Imagine a creator revealed themselves to us and declared that we are no longer fit for purpose, regardless of whatever that is, and the only resolution is destruction. Should we accept our fate? Are we now reduced to just being someone else's machinations for a singular purpose? Have we become less real? And this is what Verso must live with, but he's confronting something much worse. That there is a creator, and there is the doomed nature of it all. That everything exists because of someone else's loss. He has had to understand how to cope with the knowledge of where he came from. The discomfort of that, of our existence never really being our own. Slowly, it erodes at him. Initially, he wanted to save his mother from being removed from the canvas. Over time, the question changes. It becomes less about whether the canvas can be saved, and more if it should. His father, unwavering certainty personified, never makes that transition despite having the same knowledge. He acts like Renoir de Sandra. He aims to solely preserve his family, to protect the soul of a son that isn't his, but whose survival ensures his own family thrives. The continuation is, an act of love. However, Verso has his own internal truth. He knows that soul powering the canvas, how he feels about painting. I don't want this life is Painted Verso's own conclusion, but it is fueled by his inherited emotions, ones he struggles to separate from his own. He feels just as trapped as the soul powering the canvas, knowing that Verso never would have wanted this. And with this, Painted Verso is his own person, but lives as a contradiction. When he gets closer to proving his own humanity, the more entangled his inheritance becomes. Becoming his own person never erased the person he came from. This is why I interpret Verso's desire to end the canvas not coming from a place of depression, but exhaustion. He carries a reflection of Verso's soul, one stuck continuing down a path it doesn't enjoy. Neither of them wants to die. Neither wants to waste the beauty of life, canvas or otherwise. Yet, neither wants to continue. And more importantly, Verso does not want people to die for it. Verso never really chose death. He chose an end.
Please. I don't want this life.
Not, I don't want life. Painted Verso's tragedy is that he is a contradiction that can never resolve itself. Despite all those years of experiences diverging himself from the person he was, Verso still carries that emotional burden. How can you truly define yourself on someone else's foundations? At what point was his exhaustion his own? It must have been exhausting to have gone through all those decades grappling with this. It must have been exhausting to have then gone through all that, to then still have no answers. Who was he? Was he real? Does that even matter? Can you be real enough to know you don't want to be? We don't get an answer to any of those. Instead, we're asked something much more uncomfortable. If your experiences are real, if your relationships are real, if your choices are real, does it matter how your life began? Eventually, it isn't the answers that exhausts him. It's carrying the questions.
All we can do is carry them with us.
And that is what makes Verso resonate so strongly. He is recognizable. We all try to marry up our past with our current selves. We may not be recreated in a magical canvas, but many of us do inherit burdens, expectations we didn't create. While we have total ownership of ourselves, we are still bound by the world around us, the histories that shape us without our awareness. No one truly begins as a blank slate. Verso cannot change his origins or shake his original purpose, and yet he doesn't drown in hopelessness or wallow in nihilism. Instead, he chose to keep living. Developed relationships, values, becoming himself. Even though he chooses to end the canvas for the sake of his family the same way Verso de Sandra did, he still made the choice. Sacrifice as resolution. Although this is a sacrifice earned, not inherited. Verso never escapes the person he was created to be. The contradiction, the friction, never disappears. But perhaps that's the point. Identity was never about freedom from our origins, it was always about ownership of what we do with them. Verso chose to keep living despite the lack of answers. If you're someone who finds beauty in these unanswered questions and challenging the way we think about stories, let's keep exploring them together. The next story takes us over to Krat, where I will be delving into how the records in Liza P are not just collectibles and continue to tell the story long after the dialogue ends. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.